Trump and Bibi talked for 2 hours, and as Trump said, we had 5 topics. One was Hamas, the second, of course, Gaza, Reconstruction, what we do next. The third was Iran, naturally, and we also talked about Ukraine, the latest, so to speak, steps and results, as well as regional security. That's Syria, Lebanon, threats from all sorts of Iranian proxy structures there, and Turkey, the Gulf states. Let's start with Iran. And over the next 20 minutes, we'll cover the main points of the negotiations. Some of the results we've learned either from the participants themselves or later on from people who took part, from journalists and so on. But before that, it should be mentioned that Bibi has parliamentary elections in October of next year, the upcoming year. And of course, he needs to demonstrate close and coordinated relations with Trump. Trump did everything needed. For example, he said that if it weren't for Bibi, maybe Israel wouldn't even exist anymore. Well, it seems to me that this is a typical Trump exaggeration, but personally I have to say that before Bibi, as many probably know, I lived there from about 73 to 84, traveled the world for 2 years, then settled in the United States. Bibi was, in general, an agrarian country with semi-developed capitalist socialist relations of some sort. I don't even know, maybe a way of life. Yes, really without any special means and without natural resources during Bibi's many years of rule. I understand why many people say that being in power for too long corrupts. His wife isn't good and he's doing something wrong. I understand all of that, and honestly, I also think so in theory. But if you look back, if you look at the years, or so to speak, the results of the years when Bibi was in office, Israel became a technocratic state with gas reserves. By the way, with a powerful industry, even if it's not steelmaking. Yes, but still a powerful industry with such advanced science that when they receive planes from the United States, they improve them and send the developments back to the United States. No other country can do this. Not just doesn't do it, but simply can't do it. Israel also supplies intelligence data to the United States, by the way, which, according to professionals, is priceless. For nuclear nonproliferation, support from America needs to be demonstrated, and in fact, not just demonstrated, but real support is needed.
Today, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump summoned Netanyahu here to Palm Beach. This is already the 5th time the Prime Minister of Israel has visited President Trump since returning to office. There's a small catch. As you remember, all 20 living Israeli hostages were freed from Hamas captivity in Gaza 2 months ago. And now the Trump administration is putting some pressure on Netanyahu, stating that they want to see more efforts aimed at reconstruction. But Prime Minister Netanyahu wanted to make it clear that Hamas is still not disarmed, which President Trump heard, and he says that Hamas must disarm quickly, or else, I quote, "there will be hell to pay."
As long as Hamas remains armed in Gaza's tunnels and shelters, moving forward with reconstruction is pointless. The terms of the agreement were simple. You release all the hostages, you surrender all your weapons, we let you go to any country you want, and of course the country agrees to accept you. After that, the cleansing of Gaza begins, leveling, replacing the soil, demining, filling in all the tunnels, and only then construction. Before all that, a certain group is formed, a contingent of armed forces under the flag of probably the United Nations. I don't really understand how they're planning to do this, the ones who enter Gaza and protect everyone from everything. But this initiative committee doesn't exist yet. And most importantly, Hamas isn't giving up their weapons, which is actually what Trump is using to stall this whole thing. It really seems like he's egging on Hamas and coordinating Hamas's actions. Iran.
And the Prime Minister of Israel also brought a fresh warning about Iran to Palm Beach, stating that Iran is developing both missile and nuclear programs at facilities that were not affected by Operation Midnight Hammers. We all remember how in the summer B-2 bombers destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities, as well as those 30 Tomahawk missiles launched from the United States ship Georgia submarine in the Arabian Sea. This is all the background to the meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was very cordial, we heard both men, at the press conference. After their meetings, the Israeli Prime Minister offered President Trump the Israel Prize, the highest civilian award.
I'm sure they talked seriously about Iran. The mullahs have started showing the arrogance they lost during the B-2 bomber raid.
Tensions in the Persian Gulf have sharply escalated after Iran reportedly seized a second oil tanker in just 2 days. And this happened right after President Donald Trump ordered the seizure of an oil tanker linked to Venezuela. On Wednesday, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps did confirm that they had seized an oil tanker that was attempting to leave the country's territorial waters. Tehran accused the vessel of transporting nearly 4 million liters of smuggled fuel, and 16 foreign crew members were detained. And then came the shock. On Thursday, unconfirmed reports said Iran seized a second oil tanker, possibly linked to United States interests. Neither Tehran nor Washington have officially commented on the incident, but the timing of it has caused serious concern and questions in world capitals.
In response to the seizure of 2 Venezuelan tankers, Iran also seized 2 tankers, one of which, according to the press, is somehow connected to the United States. But since the flag isn't ours, it's not just a scandal, but something else. The connection remains unclear. Maybe it was heading in our direction, maybe it's connected to one of our companies, I don't know, but it seems to have some kind of connection to us. But the meaning behind the actions is clear. Hormuz is a strait, a narrow place. It's a key route for the world's oil and its supply. Traditionally, no one was officially responsible for navigation there, but the United States Fifth Fleet, which is based in Bahrain, has usually handled it. It's clear to everyone that this is a challenge specifically to the United States, even though it's presented as a fight against what the Iranians call unauthorized transportation of smuggled diesel. If that's the case, I'll explain what is meant. So, by unauthorized, it's their internal matter. In reality, they give subsidies to their citizens, meaning they sell at a big discount, and people buy in small batches and then bring them all together in one place. And so the goods bought with this subsidy are quietly resold. They load them onto some big ship, and sometimes, maybe even on smaller ships, they transport them. They go to this big ship, load it up, and then it sets off. So it turns out that the oil, which is subsidized for the country's population, ends up leaving the country. And the people who carried out this whole operation get that very margin. That's how it really is. Both tankers were, I think, in Iran's territorial waters. And since they were carrying, according to Iran, this very unauthorized, so to speak, dated oil, so Iran kind of has every right, so to speak, to carry out this police operation. But the rest of the world sees this as kind of a hint from Iran that they can stop shipping in the Hormuz area and start sinking ships here. Well, let's say with millions of barrels of oil on board, of course, this oil can easily catch fire. Yes, it's an environmental disaster, and of course, fuel prices skyrocket. Russia, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and others are thrilled, but Iran would actually be in trouble. And the mullahs, although they make threats, are unlikely to go that far, but they do make threats.
The Iranian president announced this weekend something many of us already knew, that his country is in a state of total war with Israel, the United States of America, and Europe. And now we all have to ask ourselves whether the Ayatollah's government is ready to sacrifice everything else in order to produce 3,000 ballistic missiles a year, just to then launch them at Israel. At this point, it seems they might actually be ready to do just that. To be continued.
So Bibi came to share his thoughts with Trump on how to prepare for a new round of war with Iran. I think this will push Trump to resolve the Hamas issue more quickly. This basically fifth column, or so to speak, the log in Israel's eye, call it whatever you want.
There are many issues on the agenda for these meetings, starting with the stalled progress in President Trump's plans for Gaza, as well as mutual concerns about Iran. The ongoing threat from Hezbollah, the campaign against Islamic State of Iraq and Syria in Syria, and the escalating dispute over Turkey's regional influence. However, the meeting will likely focus on discussing what to do about Iran, as Netanyahu will present intelligence data on Iran's efforts to restore its missile program and its network of terrorist proxies. We need to remember that there are other meetings taking place this week, including in Doha, Qatar, where the leaders of Hamas are planning the complete destruction of Israel and the creation of an Islamic State on its territory. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will also present plans during his meeting with President Trump, which include a strategy for the targeted strangulation of the terrorist army of Hamas. On this note, the Israel Defense Forces continues to clear out terrorist infrastructure in the Gaza Strip, while Hamas is working to restore its terrorist infrastructure in Gaza's schools and hospitals and is spreading internal Gazan propaganda.
Israel checks every meter of land and blows up and buries all these tunnels, warehouses, underground weapons workshops. Israel.
Listen, he is a military prime minister. He has done simply phenomenal work. He led Israel through a very dangerous period full of severe upheavals. Israel, along with other nations, might not exist now. If you want the truth, that's a bold statement, but it's what I believe. If it hadn't been for that prime minister, Israel wouldn't exist now, because they faced a force that very few countries could have handled. And we worked together, and we were extremely victorious, to say the least. Now I hear that Iran is trying to build up its power again, and if that's the case, we'll have to stop them. We will stop them. We will defeat them, but hopefully it won't come to that. I heard Iran wants to make a deal. If they want to make a deal, that's much smarter. You know, they could have made a deal last time before we carried out a major attack on them.
If Iran acts up and wants to get hit in the face again, we'll make sure they get it. Trump is confident. He means Israel, the United States, not just the United States. Although he later said that there are many others who would like to beat up Iran, and I'm sure there are many who would like to beat up Iran.
We will be dealing with Gaza. That's why this very great prime minister is here right now. We're talking about Gaza. We're talking about many things. We have about 5 main topics to discuss.
What will happen to Hamas? By the way, that's the first thorn, right there. They don't want to lay down their arms and think that Iran and Russia will sort of pull them out without them having to disarm. Not physically pull them out of there, but rather make some kind of deal so they can stay there with their weapons. Trump then stated that Hamas is being given a very short time to disarm. Otherwise, it will be, as he said, but he likes using fancy phrases. They will pay a hellish price there, but he doesn't want to say exactly what, and he's right not to, just to say, well, a hellish price, including. By the way, what's important is what was said, including a possible strike on Iran. Hamas will pay a hellish price, including a possible strike on Iran. He didn't say it outright. It came from just a few sentences. I'm trying to piece together, so to speak, what he has, like, what Iran heard. Of course, well, Iran, naturally, as I already said, those very guys, the guys who are, stirring things up. As part of the second stage of the Pugaz plan, Trump will demand the complete disarmament of HAMAS, demilitarization, destruction, so to speak, the destruction of all tunnels, all weapon production arsenals. A ban has been introduced on HAMAS participating in the governance of Gaza in any form after the war. That is, after some other order has already been established there. Netanyahu. For his part, if these conditions for Hamas are not met, he will use the army to destroy the remnants. So Hamas partisan sailors, they're not actually partisan sailors. Trump's plan provides that after Gaza is cleared of armed groups, the territory will come under an international mandate for the period of creating a stable society. So, as Trump says, there will be a technocratic, apolitical government there, Where he'll find one like that, I don't know. There are probably some people who are apolitical, probably some for governance, but why? For managing everyday and municipal issues. There's really no talk right now about state-level issues like borders, armed forces, and so on. We were told that the gas reconstruction will start soon. I suspect it depends on resolving the issue with Hamas and Iran. Now, where will the money come from? It's interesting, the Arab Emirates are taking on the financing of the gas reconstruction project. Israel rejects a long-term occupation of the sector, but Israel wants to be sure that new tunnels won't be built in place of the old ones. And Israel would like to have control over security, well, over the borders of Gaza, while Trump wants this control to be transferred to those same international forces. I don't know if they just talked about this. No, I think they did, but I don't know if they reached an agreement or not. Basically, everything is tied to the destruction of Hamas, after which the clearing of the territory begins, the gradual withdrawal of Israeli troops, the entry of international units, and the start of developing at least a plan for the restoration of the enclave. And for now, so to speak, it's the clearing, the cleaning, as I already said, covering up everything that needs to be covered up. Iran is the main thing. Of course, it's a sore spot for them too. Regulation steps are closely linked to it. Iran will try to rock the boat with all its might, and will try to keep rocking it for as long as they can. The regime in Tehran actually builds its legitimacy on the image of being the main defender of Palestine and naturally the implacable enemy of Israel. By the way, it's completely unclear in their Quran, in the first part that they recognize, which we call the Torah, all of this is fully provided for. It is said that this land belongs to the Jews, and God granted it. But obviously they decided that with their decree they can take this land away. God said it, but they canceled it with their own decree. There are God's words. Well, in other words, just like with thou shalt not kill, yes, so to speak. Everyone says do not kill, but everyone kills in war, wherever. And they execute people, and it's the same thing here. So we believe in God, but we can cancel any of his commands whenever we want. The Sunnis, led by Saudi Arabia, have concluded that it's much more beneficial to trade and be friends with Israel than to be its enemy. Also, if Iran, Israel, and Gaza, and in general those they call Palestinian Arabs, become, well, let's say friends, partners, start doing things together with Israel, this will weaken the appeal of the axis of resistance, meaning, well, what Iran is doing there. They are constantly resisting Zionism and imperialism, and in this way they sort of paint a picture of a society that is against them. These are the idealists, they believe in Allah, and those others, they're the bad ones, they're Zionists and imperialists. What are Zionists? I've heard the Arabic version, it's hilarious. Just like Russia, Iran wants to surround itself with what you might call attack dogs to create a buffer between itself and potential enemies. This buffer at one time included Syria, Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, and various other proxies, as they're called. As soon as, or if, the proxies disappear, well, let's say as soon as the proxies disappear, we are working to eliminate them. Iran is left one-on-one with the Sunnis, who significantly outnumber and outmatch them technologically. There are 1.2 billion Sunnis in the world, and only 400 million Shiites. Shiites are basically Iran. They'll also ally with the Sunnis, Israel, and the United States of America. That is, with new military technologies and significant capabilities that Iran won't have, even if it allies with China. That's why Iran will do everything possible to prevent Hamas from being disarmed. This is one of their proxy attack dogs, and they won't allow the Houthis and Hezbollah to be destroyed either. But they will stop every time that crazy Trump might again throw United States armed forces at Iran's military facilities, and Israel might accidentally drop a couple of bombs where the top ranks of Iran's leadership are hiding. I'll say for myself that Iran, well, Farsi Persians, they are incredibly talented people. America removed their Shah and installed the Ayatollahs. It doesn't matter that Democrat Carter did it. A slimy bastard, but so to speak, we do share some blame for this, ladies and gentlemen, although, well, it's not exactly our half of America, but it's still America. And it would be fair if we helped Iran get rid of the plague that's taken hold there. And it's crippling the third or fourth generation of these talented, truly kind-hearted people. What a culture Iran had. What a university there was. The science. Death to Israel. Now they shout daily, death to the United States of America, death here, death there, death, death, death. Actually, I think those who are shouting are Jews. Save us, Jews, please. So I wish them, the Iranians, subtitles, and for us too, liberation, just like for Ukraine and Russia. I wish to be freed from Putin, the oligarchs, and all the other crap that has gotten on their backs and is sucking their blood. Well, that's really all, and I think, until next time, subtitles by Dimatorzok.